What do talking trees, inflatable robots, and obscure comics all have in common? Well, for one, they all happen to be the focus of some of this year's most successful movies. I'm Grant Sebring, and today we're going to be taking a look at the history and success of Guardians of the Galaxy and Big Hero 6. This year marks a massive leap for the comic book and film industry, as comic books that even the most devoted readers have hardly heard of are being adapted into big-budget mainstream movies. This summer, Marvel Studios released their incredibly successful feature film, Guardians of the Galaxy, based on Dave Abnett and Andy Lanning's 2008 comic book of the same name. Surprisingly enough, this little property that almost nobody had heard of quickly became the most successful film this summer, outgrossing other, more well-known comic book adaptations like X-Men Days of the Future Past and The Amazing Spider-Man 2. Earlier this month, Disney Studios released their new animated feature, Big Hero 6, a film based on an even more obscure comic book that had been mostly forgotten, even by the fans. So far, this film has grossed almost $200 million and is still going strong in the box office. What's surprising about the success of these two films is American viewers' willingness to see films based on material they're unfamiliar with. However, this can actually work in the studio's favor. These films both take substantial creative liberties with their source material. Characters' backstories and abilities are changed, and romances are developed that didn't exist in the comics. However, since only a very small minority of viewers are familiar with the source material, the studio is free to take these creative liberties without upsetting their audience. Creative liberties like this don't work as well with more well-known characters in their adaptations. This can be seen in the way that many fans were unhappy with The Amazing Spider-Man 2 and the way that it changed some of its characters, like by turning the Rhino into a mech suit or by changing the ethnicity of Electro. The freedom to take these creative liberties can also work for the movie's advantage, because the comics themselves are often fairly inaccessible for new readers and sometimes aren't the most well-written material in themselves. While the 2008 run on Guardians of the Galaxy may be respected by comic readers, almost no version of the book is easy to pick up for those that are new to comics. That's because each version requires a fairly in-depth knowledge of the Marvel Comics universe, as well as some of its more obscure characters, for one to understand what's going on. However, the movie does a pretty good job overcoming this obstacle and is actually a great place for new viewers to be introduced to these characters. Big Hero 6, on the other hand, is based on a comic book miniseries written by Scott Lobdell, who is often considered one of the worst authors in mainstream comics. Although he is respected for some of his 90s work, such as X-Men Age of Apocalypse, his writing style has always been very dated, which has hurt his success in later years. Recently, his work on the DC Comics relaunch of Teen Titans was cancelled after only 30 issues, an embarrassingly short run for one of the most popular titles in comics. Regardless of source material, one can't argue that this shift to adapting more obscure comics into films is working for the industry. This may be because many people feel that the film industry has become oversaturated with traditional superhero movies and looks to stay that way for a while, as Marvel Studios has already announced their next 8 films, not to mention the numerous other superhero movies to come from studios like Fox, Sony, and Warner Brothers. Because of this, comic book movies based on more obscure material, or with a non-traditional comedic twist like what Guardians of the Galaxy had, seem both refreshing and original to viewers. This means for future comic adaptations, we're likely to see more obscure comics and possibly even some creator-owned titles turned into feature films. As far as the comics themselves go, even though these books may not always be the easiest for newcomers to get into, they do provide plenty of material for new fans to check out after seeing these movies, providing further revenue for the companies that own these characters. Thanks to the internet, a few Google searches and a couple Wikipedia pages can provide new fans all the information they need to get into these comics. For those of you that want to learn more about Guardians of the Galaxy or Big Hero 6, I personally know of a few great places to start. For Big Hero 6, I can't recommend enough that new fans avoid the original Scott Lobdell miniseries, as I can attest to how dated his writing style is regardless of when his books were published. However, in 2008, Marvel recreated this series with revolutionary author Chris Claremont at the helm. If you're unfamiliar with comics, Chris Claremont is the reason people started reading X-Men. He took the team when it was a group of bland, white-bread teenagers and turned them into one of the most popular teams in comics by adding fan-favorite characters like Storm, Nightcrawler, and Wolverine. As for Guardians of the Galaxy, I'd personally recommend the 2008 run on the series done by Dave Abnett and Andy Lanning, or you could check out the current version of the comic written by Brian Michael Bendis, who happens to be one of Marvel's most talented and popular authors right now. Even if you're someone who couldn't care less about comic books or superhero movies, the success of these two films is a sure sign that Hollywood is going to be looking to capitalize off of lesser-known source material, which will benefit fans of all genres. Regardless of your interests, I hope you found this all informative and found my advice useful. I'm Grant Sebring from Into the Long Box, signing off.